Hello and welcome to Catacris Magazine. We can be found on the web at www.catacris.com. It's my honor and great pleasure to be speaking with a longtime friend of ours, Jason Lee Beckwith, who is the founding member and drummer of Kiss Alive, SoCal Tribute Band. Kiss Alive, as I said. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, what's going on, Jason? Always good to talk to you.
Yeah, two Jasons. Now, of course, we're both huge Kiss fans, and we're talking today about the 40th anniversary of Creatures of Night. I want to ask you, because you obviously in your Kiss Tribute Band play the part of Peter Criss. Peter Criss is probably obviously the first drummer that really had a major influence on you. So, as a Kiss fan, how did you feel in 1980 when it was announced that Peter Criss was leaving the band?
Well, I'll tell you what. I was, at first I was surprised.
Yeah.
Honestly, but I was kind of floating in and out of the periphery, let's say, around that time. I was familiar with a lot of the older stuff, and of course I was familiar with the stuff that they were putting out around that time, Dynasty, Unmasked, things like that, But I don't know where I had heard, but I'm pretty sure that by then I knew that he wasn't on all the tracks of Dynasty and Unmasked. Matter of fact, looking back, I think he was not on most of either of those,
Yeah.
So it wasn't a huge surprise, and I've always seen when bands change members and stuff like that, I wasn't that emotionally invested where it was real. I mean, Peter Criss was probably one of my earliest and biggest influences on drumming, especially when they were younger, around the time of Alive, let's say, when they were really on fire. But when they announced Eric Carr, and then you start seeing interviews with him, the dude was such a nice guy.
Oh, sure.
You know what I mean? Dude was such a class act. It was hard to hate on him. You know what I mean? And then when barring a discussion of, let's say, The Elder, right? The Elder. My first real taste of Eric Carr's drumming was this album here, was Creatures of the Night. And, with songs like, I Love It Loud, War Machine, dude, it was so heavy and so awesome. It was hard not to like that guy.
Yeah, and I remember back at the time, like you said, we'd gone through Unmasked and Dynasty, and a lot of people were like, oh, Kiss is becoming a pop band. And this was kind of, especially after The Elder, was a lot of people were disappointed by that. This was kind of supposed to be a return to Kiss as a hard rock band, and that's exactly what. And Eric Carr, a lot of people don't realize, even on The Elder, he didn't play all the drum tracks. There are different studio drummers, and so this was really his first kind of true Kiss album.
On Dynasty, they had
Anton Fig.
Right.
But I'm talking about on The Elder. Even Eric Carr doesn't play all the drum tracks on there. There's guys like Tony Powers and different studio drummers. So this is his first real kind of Kiss album, and from what I know, this was, of all the Kiss albums he did, this was his favorite. And that's something he would always bring up in every interview because of the drum sound, huge drum sound.
For sure.
And
I love the way it sounded on this album.
Yeah.
War Machine is one of my favorite tracks, period. Not just, of this album. So much so that my tribute band, as you mentioned, Kiss Alive, we actually recorded a studio version of this.
Wow.
And released it. It's funny because, if you have I have Alexa, I run a bed and breakfast, and, every now and then I'll have, music out on the patio or whatever.
Wow.
And all I have to do is say, Alexa, play War Machine by Kiss Alive, and then she'll start playing it.
That is cool. And the thing that people may be surprised to learn about both War Machine and Rock and Roll Hell is those songs.
Exactly where you're going with this.
Those songs were co-written by none other than pop croner Bryan Adams.
That's right.
Mr.
That's right.
I'd do anything for you.
And you know what? It was. I actually saw an interview too where he sang like a verse of that or whatever.
Yeah.
I was backstage somewhere or whatever, and that just points out, good songwriters are good songwriters.
Yeah.
And a good song is a good song. You can change it to a different genre or a different artist, and they get a hold of it, and they can take it somewhere you never thought.
Yeah.
Well, a good song is a good song.
Oh, sure.
Case in point, Bob Dylan, All Along the Watchtower, you know?
Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
Jimi Hendrix, and it was just, it takes it to a whole other place. And that's kind of what went on here. I mean, obviously, if he would have sang that song War Machine, what would that have sounded like?
Right? Oh, yeah.
But you put it in the hands of somebody like Kiss and get Gene Simmons singing on it, oh, man, it's a no-brainer.
I mean, War Machine almost kind of sounds to me like, God of Thunder Part 2. I mean, it's got kind of that feeling, that vibe. And, also another guy that was involved with the songwriting on this album, and I think Bryan Adams brought him on board, was Jim Vallance. And a lot of those '80s bands later would use him. But that's again where a lot of us first heard that name.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, good songwriters are good songwriters. And there's a reason why people use those outside guys. Like there's another songwriter that's done a lot of stuff with Kiss.
Desmond Child.
Desmond Child.
Yeah.
Good songs are good songs, and good songwriters, there's a reason why they're in demand. They can take a song, they can write in virtually any genre. Paul Stanley, same way. He was a rock and roll drummer, but he said, well, I've been going to Studio 54 and all this disco. I bet you I could do that. Next thing you know, you got I Was Made for Loving You,
In fact, I heard Paul Stanley interview talking about the fact that when Kiss took Bon Jovi on tour, on the Animalize tour, I think 1984, Bon Jovi liked a lot of the stuff that Paul was writing with Desmond Child, and he said, "Hey, Paul, could you hook me up with that guy?" And just because he did that, they wrote all those great songs on Slippery When Wet, and then he'd go to write all those hits for Bon Jovi.
Absolutely, that's what made that album so huge.
Yeah.
Songwriting is good songwriting.
Yeah, and Desmond Child, he'd also work with like everybody from Rat to Aerosmith. So got Paul Stanley.
But again, good songwriters don't always translate themselves into genre-crossing artists and stuff. Like obviously, Bryan Adams was great at what he did.
Yeah.
But you put him in a different genre. There's no way he's putting out a punk album. There's no way he's putting out a thrash metal album, that kind of thing. But just like Bob Dylan, you know what I mean? Yeah. You weren't going to have him playing, psychedelic hard rock.
Oh no.
Say, but he was a hell of a songwriter.
In fact, I think part of it, I've heard Bryan Adams talk about, co-writing War Machine and Rock and Roll Hell, and he was saying, at the time, he wasn't very big in Canada. He was kind of just in the very early stages of his career. And so what a lot of people...
Nobody had heard of him back then.
Yeah, and a lot of people, he was saying, that's how you get your start in the music business, writing songs for other people. And then that's kind of what happened to him. And this kid, he's a pretty good writer. And then they offered him a deal. So, you just never know. And what's interesting about, as great of a songwriter as Desmond Child, for example, may be, and he got started working with Paul Stanley and Kiss, and then all these other opportunities came his way. I remember he released like a couple of solo albums, but they never really sold. But writing for other people, he had hits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't always translate into a full-blown rock star type career for the songwriter. But if you're a good songwriter, you can you put them in the hands. I don't know. I think it's because some people are just born
gifted writers,
performers.
Yeah.
They're born interpreters, let's say. Jimi Hendrix was a great interpreter. He didn't write all of the songs, but he wrote most of them, obviously. But the ones that he didn't, he could take it and shoot it over the moon. Elvis, perfect example. That guy wrote virtually none of his stuff.
Yeah.
But you put a song into his hands, and look what happens to it.
Oh, sure. I mean, it's so true. And Creatures of the Night, the other interesting thing is the fact that it's had a couple different album covers. And what's funny is the guitar player that actually played on the album never appeared on the album cover, which is kind of interesting. The ones that did never even played a lick on the album.
Yeah, the one with the makeup had Ace on there, and he's pretty much on none of it, right? Yeah. And then there's a version of it with no makeup,
with
and it was Bruce Kulick, and he's not on it either.
Yeah, I got to ask you, so going back to 1985, I remember when they came out with Creatures of the Night is being re-released and remastered with new artwork and all this stuff, and you know, I went out and bought it, and I don't know if it was
no makeup and they got Bruce on the album cover. Right?
Yeah, and I don't even know that it's really remastered or all that different. It's just got a different album cover. It was a great way maybe to market the album, get people to go out and buy it again. What were your thoughts when they did that?
Pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, and
I actually have to have a really good stereo to tell the difference at all.
Yeah, and I actually think part of the reason they scrapped the Bruce cover and went back to the original cover, because honestly, when people think of Creatures of the Night, that's the album cover they think of, and I think.
Well, because they had videos for it in makeup.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
Ace Frehley was still in the video for I Love It Loud.
Yeah, and you're right though. He didn't even. What's interesting is because I heard an interview recently with Bob Ezrin, because don't forget he also produced The Elder, and he was saying by the end of Elder, Ace was totally out of the band, and you're right. He did that video, but that was really contractually the last thing he ever did with them. From what I understand, he did not even play a lick on the album. Now, as far as Vinnie Vincent, he also kind of on Creatures came in as a songwriter initially, and then they were kind of impressed with him as a writer and what he could do. And so they eventually brought him in. But on Creatures, you know, Vinnie Vincent played on Keep Me Comin', Danger, War Machine, Sane and Center, I Love It Loud, and Killer. And kind of I Love It Loud is kind of, again, a very strong Gene Simmons track. And that was the single off of the album. And that's kind of, when you think of that out, you either think of I Love It Loud or the title track, Creatures of the Night.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is they had a lot of different guitar players on that album, and one of them almost ended up in the band. There was a couple of them that they were auditioning.
Yeah.
Robin Ford, a very famous blues player who I had the privilege of opening for with my solo band, Jason Lee and Friends. We opened up for him in a bunch of years ago, but it was San Juan Capistrano, I believe it was.
Oh, wow.
And it was his band, Robin Ford and the Blue Line, and he plays lead guitar on I Still Love You, and all the guitars on the song Rock and Roll Hell.
Yeah.
And then Steve Ferris from
Mr.
and they were really looking at him.
Yeah, and
he plays the lead guitar in Creatures of the Night, and that's kind of a thrashy, you know, hard rock song, you know, nice double bass, fast song, you know, and I was surprised, you know, because you listen to Mr.
Yeah.
And it's not even, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and talking about...
And again, a good musician
is a good musician. And talking about that, too, another thing I was interesting to... Mr. related also is there the bass player from Mr. I guess his name is Mike Porcaro. He actually played the bass on Creatures of the Night, not Gene Simmons. But
and that's, you know, no small wonder how, you know what I mean?
I think because... From what I was reading, the producer who produced this album, Michael James Jackson, this was the first album he ever produced for Kiss. Of course, he would produce Lick It Up and Animalize, but I guess he also, in his career, worked with Mr. Very much like Bob Ezrin brought in other players he worked with, like on Destroy, he brought in Dick Wagner from Alice Cooper's band when Ace couldn't do a solo on Sweet Pain or something. So, again, the producer had... worked with these other musicians. He brought them in to, you know, play the tracks.
Yeah, I guess, you know, some producers, they just have an idea of what they want it to sound like, and if you're not around, they'll just grab somebody, you know, some studio musician or something like that.
In fact, I also heard on Revenge, which you and I are going to do a separate segment on in a couple of weeks, that Bob Ezrin, who produced that, he also... I guess he didn't like Bruce's solo on Every Time I Look at You, and he brought in, once again, Dick Wagner from the Alice Cooper Band.
Wow, now that I did not know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, but Gene Simmons doesn't play bass on several songs on this. He doesn't play on Danger, he doesn't play on Creatures of the Night, and then Eric Carr actually plays bass on I Still Love You. Interesting,
and that's, I guess...
wonder if that was the start of his flirtation with Hollywood.
I kind of think it was, because I've read over years around this time he was trying to like do a pilot for have his own like Hollywood TV show or something, and I guess it was a failed project. But that's kind of I think right after he broke up with like Cher and Diana Ross, and he didn't do a first movie like until 1984. But I've heard that's when he started kind of flirting with all that.
So that's probably what was going on, and Paul and the producer were probably like, hey, you know what? He's not here. Screw it. You want to play bass? Cool. Get in there.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. From what I understand, you're very right. Like, Vinny, they got Vinny to play on like the tracks I mentioned, "Keep Me Coming," "Endangered," "War Machine," and all these others. But it was kind of like they were audition process. Okay, we'll bring these different guitar players in, and we'll see what they can do. And it's kind of interesting. You're right. Maybe, and I understand as great of a guitar player as they thought Steve Ferris was. They just didn't think he had the right look or the right image for Kiss. And I think there's also the fact that, as we sit here laughing, they had the guitar player from Mr. Mister. They were still popular, very popular at that time. And so I think another thing is like very much like...
They really came around in the late 80s, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't even remember, to tell you the truth, but in any case, my point is I don't know if it had anything to do with how well known he was, in the music industry or not. Because remember, like when Peter Criss left, that's the very reason they got somebody like Eric Carr. They didn't want, because I heard like Carmine had approached Kiss about wanting to take Peter's place. But oh no, you're people already know what you look like, so we have to have an unknown. That was the thing too.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and and then I've also heard over years that Bob Kulick played on some of these tracks, but from what I was able to kind of find out, he recorded some demos, but none of his tracks were used.
No, I don't think so. I know that he did the studio tracks, or most of them anyways,
on Killers.
That appeared on the live too, and he kind of floated in and out of the camp for years.
Yeah.
Until he got his brother the gig. I wonder if he actually recommended his brother, or if they already knew of Bruce.
I think they knew of Bruce through Bob, but from what I've heard Bob talk about several times in many interviews I've heard him do over the years was the fact that when he's bald-headed, and they didn't really think he had the look, and so he said, Constantly was telling Paul and Gene, why don't you get my brother? He does have the look, he does have the chops, and in fact, that you may remember that Bruce and Bob were originally in Meatloaf's band together, all the way back to the Bat Out of Hell tour. So he apparently was always pushing for. Back around, they were in Meatloaf's band, for the Bat Out of Hell tour.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Both of them were in Meatloaf's band at the same time?
Yeah, and I understand Bob was in the band first, but he once told, I guess he told Meatloaf, well, if you want me in the band, you gotta have my brother in the band.
Wow.
And so that's what happened, and then he was always pushing for Bruce to be in Kiss with Gene. And I've heard Bruce talk about as far back as Creatures of the Night. He went to visit them in the studio, but kind of just as a friend, and he didn't get the gig until like two years later.
What a small world, the way these people float in and out of each other's world. Kiss did a song in later years with what's his name, Michael Bolton. Right?
Oh, sure, Forever.
Before he became the big soft rock king that we all know and that some love.
Blackjack, yeah.
He had his own hard rock band called Bolton, and he had a song called Everybody Get Crazy or something like that. And I believe on that album, Bruce Kulick was playing. Now,
you may not know this, that's true, and they have another connection besides Bruce playing on that album. They were also, I don't know if you've ever heard of, Bruce had a band called Blackjack, and once again, Michael Bolton was in that band, and that's when they first hooked up for the first time.
What a small world it is,
Yeah, it really is. And then Forever was kind of Kiss's first major hit since like even I Was Made for Loving You, and it's just amazing,
And again, the power of good songwriting.
Yeah, it really is, and
like when Aerosmith came back and then did that song with Diane Warren, I think she wrote "Don't Want to Miss a Thing," if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I know she wrote something for them that became a huge hit. And, by then, the band is, 3 decades on.
Oh, sure.
You kind of get a little burned out on ideas, so you enlist somebody else, get some fresh blood in the mix, and boom, there you go.
Yeah, but see, the reason I never had a problem with Kiss bringing in outside writers, because even when they did, for the most part, Gene and Paul were still co-writers on all the tracks.
Yeah, and it's how they translated. It's like Ozzy.
Yeah.
There's another example. That guy writes virtually none of his lyrics. He'll suggest themes or he'll suggest adjustments, but by and large, like in Sabbath, as we all know, Geezer Butler.
Yeah.
In his solo career, a lot of that stuff was Bob Daisley, things like that. So he didn't, but the way he interprets it is everything, and And same thing with Kiss. Yeah. Even if it's an outside songwriter, it's still going to get filtered through them.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's still going to come out a Kiss song. Once they get a hold of it, it's a Kiss song.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people over years telling me, "Oh, you're a Kiss fan. Kiss sucks, man. They're awful musicians." I say what you will about their musicianship, but they've got great songs, and Gene and Paul especially. I love their singing voices. They write great songs. I mean, in fact, the Kiss as a band has been together for 50 years. They're doing something right.
That's right. They're one of the longest running and most successful American hard rock bands of all time. I think at this point, the only ones that are active, that have been active longer than them, correct me if I'm wrong, is Aerosmith, and only by a couple of years.
Oh, sure.
I don't think anyone else out there currently has been doing it longer.
Well, you're right. As far as American bands, only one I can really think of that maybe's been around a little longer, and again, not American bands, would be like Deep Purple or The Who.
Yeah, well, the Stones are still out there too,
Yeah.
But the Stones are eternal.
So let's go down the track listing here of this album, because one of my favorite tracks is obviously the title track, "Creatures of the Night." Now that's got a great drum sound. So I got to ask, have you ever played that with your Kiss tribute band? And
we've kind of been working on it and stuff, but we haven't. That one has not made it into the set list yet. We do a couple of songs off this album, but that's not one of them yet. But my guitar player, Casey Trask, that's one that he keeps lobbying for because he's, he's just a shredder, and that's really kind of a shreddy song for Kiss, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and shreddy, that's a new word. I just made it up. It's going to catch on, I swear.
Oh, that's great. Now, let me ask you as a drummer, because, again, to my ears, it's got a great drum sound to that track. I mean, as a drummer, is that part of the reason having...
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you. I mean, the whole album. I mean, Creatures of the Night, and there's a couple of other ones. It's just, the drum sound is so huge. It's almost like if Bonham was playing with Kiss. It's just such a bass heavy. There's a lot of reverb. It just sounds like it was made in a big room. It's just awesome. I love that, especially Creatures of the Night. That's one of my favorite ones on the album.
Which I know Eric Carr always talked about being heavily influenced by John Bonham, and I've heard
you can tell right out of the gate.
Yeah, I've heard the guy say that the studio where he recorded this album in L.A. I guess one of the things it was known for was for having a huge drum sound. And Creatures of the Night, interesting enough, if you listen to that, it almost sounds kind of like somebody kind of like a drum beat you'd hear like going into battle or something.
Yeah, well, I kind of always compare it in my head when I've been thinking around with it in the studio and stuff. I compare the drum beat, not exactly, but you can tell there's definitely an influence. And I would say specifically, what's the Immigrant Song?
Yeah, there you go.
It's got that same kind of, that kind of a thing is very present in the style of the drumming on Creatures of the Night song.
Yeah, and now as far as Creatures of the Night, the song, I got to ask you, is part of the reason it hasn't made it into your set because it's such a hard song to perform or learn?
No, I think when we wrap our heads around a song that, there's definitely a lot harder songs in the Kiss canon, especially for, a guy who's primarily, speaking of myself here, who is primarily a single bass drummer,
Okay.
But that's not, a lot of people think that that's a double bass, but you can really accomplish that on one foot.
Oh, okay.
Now you talk about a song like from Asylum, an album you mentioned earlier, like King of the Mountain. Now, if you're not a double bass drummer, you're not playing that song.
Okay.
How good your right foot is, and I've got a great right foot, but it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So, it's definitely one of the more challenging ones on this album to play. Let's say that, but that's definitely not why it's made it in yet.
Okay, I was just curious because I'm not a musician.
Valid question, because it does sound like a double bass song.
Because see, I'm not a musician myself. I just listen to this stuff, but just listening to the track, I'm thinking to myself, man, the guy beating the drums back there, Eric Carr. I mean, he must have been.
Dude, Eric Carr's a monster. There's some of his stuff that there's no way we're ever going to be doing.
So I'm sure.
That guy's just a monster. I consider him to be the most gifted Kiss drummer there ever was. Obviously, the style of the original four is what made Kiss.
Oh, sure.
There's no denying that. The chemistry is out of sight, and chemistry even a little bit, you're going to get a completely different sounding thing. However, and I would never take that away from Peter Criss. I play mostly Peter Criss songs, you know, because that's what Kiss is known for. But as far as the three main drummers that they've had, and I'll even put Anton Fig in there, though he's not an official member. Although from what Ace says, he was for a day. But I would say that Eric Carr is by far and away the biggest monster on drums that Kiss ever had.
And you know what's interesting? Eric Carr, I mean, super talented guy on the drums, and like you mentioned, he's also a guy who can play bass, guitar, great lead singer. It's kind of interesting because they also had him sing some of the same stuff like that Peter did, like Black Diamond. He would sing in concert.
Well, they have Eric Singer does that too. You know, it's just that's who the drummer. You know, I mean, they've got to have breaks and stuff for Paul and Gene, because you think of all the stuff that Paul sings. Acrobatic, you know, Olympic type vocals. So you got to have some breaks here and there in the set.
I guess what I'm saying is what's kind of interesting, like. You listen to like even go on YouTube and watch a video of Peter Criss singing, you know, Black Diamond, you know, during an old '70s Kiss concert, or Eric Carr, you know, doing it in the '80s. They got similar kind of singing voices. Even if you remember when he did Beth on Smash's Thrashing, they kind of sounded.
I remember that very well.
They kind of.
That's. Well, I was very surprised when they did that, let's say. And of course, you know, Eric Carr was very respectful, and he always said, look, I didn't want to do that. And I even called up Peter Criss from the studio and said, look, man, I'm sorry, they're making me do this, you know. And I've heard, you know, because I was a big fan of this live video that they did around the time of Animalized. It was
Animalized Live Uncensored,
exactly. And he does Black Diamond on there, and he's really great, really great. I mean, to me, nothing beats the old school screaming of Peter Criss. He could scream in key and sing that way, you know. I mean, just like there was just nothing like it. Eric Carr's vocals were great on that song, but I still got to give it to Peter Criss.
Oh, sure. I mean, and I even recently, you know, I think it dates back a few years, but over the last couple of years, Peter Criss did an interview with Eddie Trunk, and he was kind of telling that same story. He says, "Oh yeah, Eric was all upset. He called me when they were re-recording Beth, and he was really upset. And I told, you know, Eric, just do whatever you got to do." But you know, apparently that even when Eric got sick, that him and Peter were friends, and they were talking on the phone. So you just never know some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what a bummer that was when Eric died.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I mean, you really felt it, and. Could you imagine, you know, poor Eric Singer, as great as getting that gig was for him, but you know, you're stepping in for the guy that just died of cancer.
Yeah, you know, and that was such a, you know, and Kiss gets a lot of crap for all they abandoned him and stuff. You know, there's a lot of stuff that came out of the Carr family, or the Carvello family, as it were. But you know, you look at that video for "God Gave Rock and Roll to You." You know,
I mean, that was
to let him do that song. You know. Obviously,
I mean,
Paul and Gene called the shots in that band, specifically Paul. You know, so he didn't record the song. He didn't record anything on Revenge. But what did they do? They still put a drum solo of his on there, and they had him come out and do the video for "I Was Made" or
God Gave Rock and
Roll to You. And God bless him, he played his heart out on that video.
I mean, you can tell.
Even though he was miming, he still gave it everything he had.
I mean, you can tell.
Because he didn't have any hair by then, you know?
That was a wig,
I mean, I look at that video now, knowing what I know. I thought for a while, I had thought that he had actually played drums on that song. I didn't know. And then when I heard the story behind the video, boy, it just pulls on your heartstrings, you know? Yeah,
from what I understand, the little kind of vocal section sounds kind of Queen-like. He does the background.
Oh, that's right. He is on that.
He does the background vocals, but that's it. But yeah, you're so right. If you watch that video, I urge people to go online and check the video for God Gave. That's the last thing he ever did with Kiss. And Paul Stanley's gone on record, and Gene, and they said, yeah, man, we don't know how he did it. I mean, he was deathly ill, but he played his heart out. And he was such a rock and roll soldier. You could see in the video what Kiss meant to him. And even Paul Stanley admitted in his book that, you know, I wish I would have known, kind of realized what I know now, that you know, Kiss was just.
Yeah, they wouldn't let him play on that.
He says we were.
You know, at the time, what are you thinking of? You're thinking, my buddy's got cancer and I want him to get better. Rock and roll is not important. What's important is you go home and heal.
Yeah, in fact,
we got to do this album. We'll get somebody else to play, but you go home and heal up first. That's what's important.
In fact, I
think had he got better, I think that there's every reason to believe that he would have been back in Kiss full time if he would have got better.
Yeah, I mean, and Paul Stanley even said that in his book. He says, I didn't realize at the time, very much like you just said, Jason, that he said, we wanted Eric to get better, take care of himself. And he says, I didn't realize very much how Eric obviously felt about Kiss, the same way that I do, that, Kiss meant everything to him, and he wanted to play there, every last, I guess, till the last breath he took. And he said maybe it would have motivated him. We don't know, but that's what we were thinking at the time. So
yeah, all you want to think of is my buddy is sick, and I want him to get better.
And he said, Paul was even admitted several times since then. He's like, that was my way too of protecting myself. I didn't want to think that he was going to die. I told myself he was going to get better. So until you go through that, you just never know.
Yeah, hindsight is just something else, man.
Yeah.
You look back and, with the gift of hindsight, you can look back and, a lot more clear. Your vision is a lot more clear, but, in the moment,
yeah.
What can you do? You can only go based on how you feel at the time. And it's easy for people to take shots at
sure.
Paul and Gene, knowing what we all know now.
Yeah, yeah.
But they didn't have, that hindsight either. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I tend to believe that they mean what they said on that stuff.
Sure.
They were just, dude, my buddy's sick. We want him to get better. That's what you need to worry about. Don't worry about the music. We'll take care of that until you get better.
Yeah, and Creatures Night. The other thing I want to bring up about this album, going back to the original album cover. I mean, back in 1982 when this album came out, they were still very protective. They wanted the fans and everybody to. They wanted us to believe, okay, we got a new drummer, but Ace is still in the band. They'd already gone through losing Peter Criss, and they were very protective of kind of wanting everybody to have that image that they're all the best of friends and they got along. Now, my question to you is, years later when it came out, that no, Ace doesn't play a lick on the album. We put him on the cover. Vinnie Vincent plays on most of the track. We got these other guys that came in and played their solos or whatever. But when that all came out, how did you feel? Did it bother you? Did you still think
it didn't bother me in the least? I'll be perfectly honest with you.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me in the least, and because by then most hardcore Kiss fans knew that Ace wasn't on all of the earlier stuff either.
Yeah.
There's a big chunk of Destroyer that he's not on, and he was still firmly in the band then. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
There's a whole side, all those studio tracks except for one on the Live 2 that he didn't play on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really, I think I had heard, by the time Creatures came out, I had heard about Anton playing on some drum stuff, Anton Fake. So it didn't bother me in the least. People come and people go. And by then, I was starting to get into my teen years and stuff, and you start to have your eyes open a little bit. People come, people go. It is what it is.
And
how many different guitar players did the Stones have, and they were still out there rocking? To me, my thing was, is the music good? If the music is good, man, I'm on board. Let's roll.
Yeah. And it's definitely a different sounding band for that reason, because anytime you bring a new member into the band, it's going to change the sound.
Oh, yeah. The chemistry is definitely different, but in a good way, I think.
Oh, yeah. Okay, and then another track on here I like, Sane and Center. Let's talk a little bit about that. What do you think of that song?
Now, what do you think of that?
It's not like one of the most standout tracks, but I think it's a different sounding track. I think at the time, when Kiss is trying to prove to everybody they're a hard rock band, and this, I don't know if you want to even call Creatures a hard. I think it's kind of hard rock, but it's leaning. This is probably the first album where Kiss is really heavily leaning more towards a metal feel, and I would
call it a heavy rock.
Yeah.
It's kind of heavy metal. It's kind of hard rock. I would call it very heavy rock.
Yeah, because
War Machine. Creatures of the Night. That's kind of a metal song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is much more to me in line of metal, and if you think about what the rock scene was kind of becoming at that time, this is very early '80s, and by Lick It Up, the next album, it's kind of a lot heavier. You go back to the debut album, okay, and even something like Deuce or Strange Ways on Hotter Than Hell. I think we could call those metal tracks too, but at the time, Kiss is more thought of as a rock band, hard rock band. But this is also a new decade that's kind of on the horizon, and so it's obviously that after this is a 10th studio album, Kiss is celebrating the 10th anniversary of the time, so they're kind of proving, hey, okay, we're doing something a little different, but we're still here.
Who's the Michael Japp?
Michael James,
songwriter, was the co-writer on that. I think that was just Paul. Gene, and Gene getting a little outside help to tune it in.
Yeah.
I don't think that guy really did a whole lot of stuff, but I think that's just somebody that Gene was working with to help him fine tune it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is another album where it kind of Paul and Gene are kind of working on their own. A lot of the great Kiss stuff I love was like stuff off of Destroyer, and even the earlier Kiss albums where you'd have Gene and Paul trading off on lead vocals. They would co-write. I mean, I was surprised to learn the other day when I was looking something online, but Gene actually co-wrote Strutter. I think of that as a Paul Stanley tune, obviously, but he's a co-writer.
Conversely, God of Thunder
is
so identified with Gene's monster demon character, but it was written by Paul, and it was actually almost a disco vibe when it was first done.
Oh yeah, in fact, I think if you go on YouTube, you can find
I've heard it.
Paul's demo.
It's on their box set too, isn't it?
Yeah. And we sit here and laugh about it now, but obviously we got Bob Ezrin to thank for that. It was Bob Ezrin who told Paul, you know what? That's much more of I think of Gene doing that song, and
he was right.
He's such a visionary. I mean, that's why he's a great producer, but he is,
They slowed it down a little bit and made it super heavy. And then I was really creeped out when they got the kids to do the little floating vocals in the background and stuff. That's what stuff like that obviously came from Ezrin, and that just shows you, a good producer can just make an album into a collection of songs into something that's a whole other beast. He'd done it with Alice Cooper, $1 Billion Babies and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, so he's still working with
those songs, and then you hear all those extra little touches that just take it into a whole nother level. Like what Bob Rock did with the Black Album, of Metallica. I mean, a good producer is worth his weight in gold.
Well, and I don't know if you've ever heard. There's a demo version. I'm sure you can check it on YouTube. Find it of Great Expectations, where the lyrics are a little different, and I kind of wish they would have stuck with this version. It was where it says Gene is singing the song. He's like, you see me playing my bass and what my mouth can do, and then he says something about you see Peter beating his drum and Ace playing his guitar.
Oh, I see what you mean. Kind of like when they did, that all four of them had the little what's that song that came out later? But they didn't really each one of them had a vocal line in it. They didn't really mention them by name. I believe it was You Wanted the Best.
Yeah. Off of I know that track you're talking about. Yeah.
But now you got me doing some homework. I'm gonna have to go and hear that.
Yeah. So again, it's a demo version of Great Expectations, and the lyrics are slightly altered. And as a musician, I'm sure they do that a lot of times. But I'm like, why?
I don't know that would have made it better. I'm gonna have to hear it.
Yeah.
Because to me, it would have been a little bit forced.
Yeah.
You got to mention each guy by name and stuff like that. Where I get what he was doing, and I think his heart was in the right place by writing it like that. Maybe he was trying to, reach out to all of his guys and make it a,
team effort,
one kind of vibe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm gonna have to go with Bob on that one. I'm gonna have to go with Bob Ezrin on that one. I think it's better the way that it was recorded. But I will reserve judgment until I hear the song personally.
Yeah, I think.
And then when we revisit this topic, we will talk about that song again.
Okay, and then I want to ask you about another one I love is "Keep Me Coming." To me, that's got a great bass track all the way through it.
Well, that title is classic Paul Stanley, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And then "Rock and Roll Hell." That's another song I kind of always liked. It's kind of a little under the radar.
It's another Bryan Adams tune as well.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I got to ask you. You may remember also a few years ago, Ace Frehley covering this song on Origins 1, which is kind of interesting when he didn't even play on the original track, but I guess...
Yeah, he's done that a couple times over the years. He did that with Hide Your Heart.
Yeah. In fact, somehow he got a hold of a demo of that track, Hide Your Heart, and of course Kiss was recording it at the same time, and he was kind of in a little argument with Paul. Said, well, you guys are recording, I'm going to record it too. And of course they're the same year, like 5 different versions of the same song came out by different people.
Yeah, Bonnie Tyler. Like that?
Yeah, I forget who else, but yeah, Molly Hatchet, I think, even was one. Yeah, so I don't know, but that's and then of course the track it's got to be my favorite on here is I Love It Loud. I mean that was a single.
That whole second side is just nothing but just monster tunes.
Yeah.
Even I Still Love You, which is a ballad basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just I Love It Loud though. That right there was the first song I heard off of this album. I Love It Loud. And when that bass drum, the whole drum intro of that song, that's just incredible.
And I think as a rhythm,
and you knew they were going to be just fine.
I think as a rhythm section, like on I Love It Loud, Gene and Eric are just really locked in there.
I'll tell you what, and that just, his drum tone on that was just, it blows me away. Yeah,
and you mentioned I Still Love You. Now to me, like, Kiss has done a lot of great ballads over years, obviously, like, probably Beth, Forever being the biggest two, but I Still Love You, I don't know if that's like a ballad. I mean, it kind of has a real Zeppelin kind of vibe to it. But it's probably, out of everything Kiss has ever done, it's one of the most different kind of sounding songs. I don't even really know what to call it. Is it a rock song?
A heavy ballad, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
You got a point. But I'll tell you what, the playing on that, well, there again, that one and I Love It Loud is 2 of the 3 songs that were co-written by Vinnie Vincent on this album.
Yeah, in fact, I've heard over the years that supposedly it was Vinnie Vincent that brought the track into the band when he became a full-time member. And originally there's a version somewhere, but I don't know if it's true or not. Supposedly he's talked over years that there's a version with Paul doing the vocal, but of course it's never been released to date, so who knows if there's...
I Love It Loud?
No, I Still Love You.
Oh, so who was doing the vocals on the demo version?
Well, supposedly it was originally a Vinnie Vincent song, it's a track that he brought into the band, and I think he worked on it with Paul. But
so there's a version with Vinnie doing the vocals somewhere out there?
I think so, yeah. And
that's interesting.
And then somebody was talking recently about a new Creatures box set that's coming out in November, and saying, well, why isn't that on there? And somebody saying, well, maybe.
I can tell you exactly why that's not on there.
Vinnie wants.
They don't want to do any more business with that guy.
Yeah, which you can't really blame them.
Nope. I heard he just pulled out of another concert.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get that. I think, unfortunately for the guy, it's partly him too, but I think that he's got people that just, I mean, what really gets me about him more than anything, I mean, I can't even forget about all this other crap of canceling and not showing up for gigs, but I think even just charging your fans, if you go on his official website, $150 for like, the 2 Vinnie Vincent CDs that came out over 30 years ago. You haven't put out any new music, and because it's got your...
Not even re-releases or anything like that.
Yeah, and because it's got your autograph, you're going to charge your fans $150. I mean, not interested.
Yeah, no. Or charging for guitars that never show up, or...
Yeah.
I don't know, I just think you got to do right by your people, and...
Yeah, and that's...
Commit to doing a cancer benefit concert, you show up. You got to be a man of your word.
Yeah, I mean, in
but
fact...
then again, we don't know the other side of the coin.
Yeah,
we
that's
don't know
true.
The business stuff that's going on behind the scenes.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. I guess give a man the benefit. And then, of course, Killer, that's another cool track. The War Machine. So I think, I love it. Probably I'd say the top 4 tracks got to be the title track. I Still Love You. Part of the reason because that's just everything Kiss has ever done. That's one of the most different sounding tracks. And if you ever seen them in concert, I mean, Paul.
I'll tell you what, the best version of that song I ever heard or saw was when they did the MTV Unplugged show.
Oh yeah, great version.
Man, oh man, Paul's voice was just so great that night, and the version of this song that they do on there, it just sounded, I don't know, with the acoustic guitars and stuff on there, it just sounded so awesome.
And then, like you said, War Machine, just a great all-around drum track. I mean...
I love it. The version of War actually the arrangement that they did on that Animalized Live and Uncensored.
Yeah. And you mentioned your little bed and breakfast you have. I was curious, besides playing your version of that, have you ever had the band play for any of your guests there?
Well, it's interesting you ask that. We have, like during the COVID shutdown where the clubs were just shut down completely and nobody could go out and do gigs, we did a couple of streaming shows here.
Oh, cool.
And I remember one very clearly that we did a full concert from my studio, and there were indeed guests at my bed and breakfast that night, and everybody came up to the pool deck, and we opened the doors of the studio, and we had some food out there, and people were just hanging out, and oh yeah, it was great. We had a great time.
Oh, that's fun. So
imagine being one of those guests. You go to a bed and breakfast, and when you say the word bed and breakfast, you're thinking of like flowers on the blankets, you know. You're thinking of probably jazz music on the radio when you go to the pool deck or whatever, and you go up there and here's these guys in clown makeup playing hard rock music, you know, and much to the benefit of the surrounding properties as well.
Now I gotta ask.
A great night, man. That was a fun night.
I'm sure the guests knew this.
It's available on our Facebook page. There's because we did it on Facebook Live.
Okay.
And then the video posts after you end the live stream. So if people go to facebook.com/KissTheLive and then they hit the videos page, I'm sure that they can find the I believe there's a full-length one, and then there's what I called a 3-song sampler from another time that we were up there doing some stuff. And both of those were recorded here in my studio.
How cool is that? Now let me ask you, what is going on with your band Kiss Live? I know you guys are always out playing gigs, but do you have any...
Well, we got a lot of shows coming up, and actually one that I just am going to announce in the next couple of days.
Okay.
Well, let's see. At the end of this month, on September 30th, we are going to be... We just went up to Oroville, California a couple of months ago. We played at this amazing place called the Feather Falls Resort Casino.
Oh, wow.
And within like 3 days of coming home, I'm getting a call from my agent, hey, they want you back in a couple of months.
How cool.
You're back in September. I'm like, yes, we are.
Wow.
So at the end of this month, September 30th, we'll be performing at Feather Falls Casino again, excuse me, in Oroville, California.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, I think in October, we've got quite a few shows coming up. October 15th, Saturday, October 15th, we're going to Bakersfield to premiere at a place called Rockin' Wings. Now, there's 2 of them.
Wow.
And all you Bakersfield people out there, I know that there are 2 locations of Rockin' Wings, and we are going to be at Rockin' Wings East Side. So gather up your friends and come out that night. And I'm playing there not only because I'm addicted, as most people would know, I'm addicted to chicken wings, heavy.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be at Rockin' Wings East Side on the 15th, and come for the show and stay for the wings. And then on the 21st of October, we're going to be at Lake Havasu.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be an amazing show there. We're going to be out at the London Bridge Resort in Lake Havasu. The original London Bridge, brought to America brick by brick, and reassembled by some crazy cats over there in Lake Havasu. That's going to be awesome. Actually, that's part of a 2-day festival.
Oh, wow.
There's going to be 3 top-shelf tribute bands on each day, and outside, of course, it's going to be a huge festival. And I'll tell you what, we're going to, our day alone, you have a tribute to Foreigner.
Oh, wow.
Then you have Kiss the Live, and then following us is one of my favorite tribute bands of all time. People out there in the internet land, listen to my voice. You must see the Queen tribute called Queen Nation.
Oh, yes.
They are
the premiere.
Hands down the best tribute band I've ever seen. And I've been watching since the time of the Atomic Punks and all those guys.
Oh, wow.
The Atomic Punks were amazing. They set the gold standard. But I'll tell you what, I have never, my solo band, Jason Lee and Friends, we opened up for them some months ago, and I honestly, Jason, I was blown away.
Yeah, I mean, I just tell people,
I'm as cynical as they come.
I just tell people,
you, they blew me away.
Yeah, I just tell people,
on day one,
Atomic Punks,
Kiss, and Queen on day one.
Oh wow.
And then on day two, I mean, you've got like Led Zeppelin again, you know, a Led Zeppelin tribute.
Yeah.
I mean, just some crazy fun. So on 21st, we'll be at Lake Havasu at the London Bridge Resort. Then on Saturday, October 29th, I'm just about to announce, actually, so I'm telling you first,
sure.
That we will be flying up to Oregon, and we're going to be doing a show up there. Where was it that we were going to be? It's the Wild Horse Resort up in Oregon.
Boy, you guys are always playing.
We're having a lot of fun. And then we'll be back home in Southern California, and on Halloween night, we're going to have a Halloween party at the Yamava Resort and Casino in Highland.
Oh, wow.
In San Bernardino. So we've got like 5 shows in the next 5 weeks.
So I guess you guys are really making up for all that downtime during the pandemic, huh? I'm not playing.
Yes, sir, we are. And then on November 8th, we're going to be in Apple Valley, California, which is near Victorville, and we are going to be playing at a place called the Hilltop Tavern.
Wait, now,
we're 6 shows in the next 2 months, man.
Wow.
We're bringing it on, dude.
What a way to kind of, I mean, when you sit here thinking about, we got like 3 more months to 2022, so what a way to rock out the rest of the year. And I got to ask you, people are going to obviously see what a talented drummer you are, but are we going to get to see the vocal talents of Jason Lee at any of these shows?
Well, you know what we do. I do sing a couple songs every show. You know, I would be crucified if we didn't play Beth.
Yeah.
So I get out there and I sing that most every show we do. And then one of my favorite tracks to do, I'm singing and playing drums on Black Diamond.
That's a great track. Hey, I got to ask you.
Who knows? We might have a few surprises here and there. So I'll be singing. And we all sing in the band. Everybody does.
That's Kiss.
Our guitar player does, of course, Shock Me, and every now and then we'll throw Rocket Ride or something like that. So.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're equal opportunity in this band.
Oh, that's the actual Kiss too. You know, that's one of the things I always loved about the band. I mean, Gene and Paul sing the bulk of the stuff, but you know the other guys got to sing stuff too. And have you ever sung like?
I'll tell you what I like about our band.
Yeah.
Versus other Kiss tribute bands, and not for nothing. I don't know all of them obviously, but as far as at least the ones out here in the Southwest and stuff, most of them play. They'll say that they play songs from different eras, but really, or they'll say they pay tribute to different eras, but usually what they mean is that they'll do different costume changes.
Oh, sure.
But they only play the pre-breakup stuff, all the original Kiss stuff, like up to, say, Alive 2, or maybe they'll play I Was Made for Loving You, but they don't play anything for outside of the original makeup era.
Yeah.
Not in this band. Kissed Alive plays music from every era of the band.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's
we don't play it currently, but we at one time we even included some of the the current lineup. We did Modern Day Delilah.
Oh wow.
So we're not afraid to go anywhere. We play from all eras of the band because I think. If you're a Kiss tribute band and you're only doing the old school stuff, I think you're cheating the fans.
Oh, sure.
I think you're cheating Kiss fans. And I'm not saying our fans, because our fans are Kiss fans.
Yeah, especially.
They're not our fans. We're out there waving the flag for Kiss. That's how I feel, you know? We're no different than the people that are sitting there in the audience when we go play a show. We are Kiss fans, and we're enjoying the celebration together. That's how I see it. That's how everybody in Kiss Alive sees it. We're not the band, and they're the audience, and they're definitely not our fans. We are all, everybody in that club that night, we are all Kiss fans. And so I think it's cheating Kiss fans. If you're a Kiss tribute band and you don't play stuff that's post-original lineup, I think you're cheating Kiss fans out of a lot of great music. I mean, case in point, the album we're talking about right now. If we only played original era stuff, we wouldn't be playing War Machine. And what a travesty that would be. How amazing is that song? I Let It Loud. You know, Ace might be in the video, but he's not on the album.
Yeah.
And Peter Criss sure isn't on that album.
Oh, sure.
And how lame would that be if we wouldn't touch either of those songs?
And especially...
Lick It Up.
Yeah.
Heaven's on Fire. You know what I mean? Those are amazing songs. Tears Are Falling.
Sure.
Another one we do. So that's what I think. I think, not to toot our own horn, but I'm gonna for a minute because I'm really proud of my band. I'm proud of the guys that I play with, and I'm very proud of the fact that we will go all over the 40, 50 years of Kiss to mine gold for our set list.
I mean, that's what I get ready to say. For a band that's been around, you got to consider they've been around 50 years now. This album we've been talking about for almost an hour, 40 years old this year. I mean, can you believe that?
We're getting old, man.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun in rock and roll.
And I will toot your horn for you because I think too, just even talking to you all the times I talked to you over the years, very much like you and I have probably and many other Kiss fans heard Gene and Paul say over the years, that when they first started Kiss, their goal was we just picked up the guitars, got up on stage, and we became the band we always wanted to see.
That's right.
And you guys are kind of carrying on the legacy, so to speak.
We fly the flag, man.
Yeah.
If Kiss isn't in town, you can come see us. We'll all party and listen to Kiss music together until it's time to go see the next Kiss concert.
Yeah. Now, Jason Lee,
we don't go out there and try and act like we're Kiss. Yeah. We don't go out there and act like we're better than the people that we're not doing anybody a favor.
Yeah.
They're not privileged to see us. We're privileged to be able to play these shows and to celebrate this music with fellow Kiss fans.
Yeah, now Jason Lee, not to put your personal business out there, but you shared this with us a few years back that you're perfect to play Peter Criss because you really do have 9 lives. I know a few years back you suffered a heart attack while you were on stage. How is your health these days? And
I'll tell you what, my health is pretty good these days. Man.
Thank God for that, huh?
Because of modern medicine, there's something to be said for changing gears and doing what you love. And I had spent 26 years in a print shop with cement floors and no windows. And granted, I was very good at what I did, but
you didn't love it. You didn't love it.
You get burned out, and being burned out is not a fun person to be or to be around. And so by the time I had my third heart attack, clearly it was time to make a change. So I came out here to the relatively countryside, at least to the way it looks around where I live. I got a little place up on the side of a hill overlooking a vineyard. I got a pond. I got birds flying around. I got coyotes singing to me at night. And I get to meet people from all over the world, just like in the band, I play more music than I ever have. And it's not like, for anybody thinking I retired, I didn't retire. Working at this bed and breakfast, I work harder now than I ever have in my life, but I'm also healthier than I've ever been since I started having heart problems.
I think the difference...
So I'll tell you what, there's something to be said for doing what you love. I mean, I know it's a cliche, a well-worn cliche, but it's not a cliche if it's true.
I think
it's true for me to say that if you do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And so now I meet, for both of the things that I do with my time, I meet people from all over the world. We've had people stay at my bed and breakfast from, which by the way is Villabonsel, and people can check it out at www.villabonsel.com. They can check out our Mongolian yurts, authentic, straight out of Mongolia, that they can stay in, and I make them breakfast every morning. Me, Mr. Rock and Roll Drummer. I'm making you breakfast every morning. And doing it for the best. We get people from literally every continent except for Antarctica, and those are all imported from all the other continents anyways.
Wow.
We had literally people from as far away as Russia, as far south as the southernmost parts of South America, Africa, Europe, everywhere, man. And I wouldn't trade it for a thing. And I get the same thing from my music.
Wow.
Playing these Kiss tribute shows, and a lot of the venues we play, there's a lot of tourism involved in, like, let's say, casinos and Lake Havasu's a big tourist place. So you get to see people at these shows that are literally from all around the world.
Yeah, and you know
and there's nothing like it.
I just want to say,
my answer to your question, having said all that, is I'm doing good, man. I'm feeling great, and I get to do what I love, and I wouldn't trade any of it, and I'll be doing it until the wheels fall off of the vehicle, man.
Well, that's great, because I want to just end on this note. Somebody that's followed you and gotten to know you over the years, even just through the telephone, I feel like I personally know you, so I thank God that you're doing so happy and you're doing so well. I want to let people know we're going to be doing a part 2 of this in November to talk about the new Creatures box set once we've had a chance to check it out. And you're also going to, maybe in a few weeks, do another interview, talk about the 30 years of Revenge. That turned 30 years this year. So I also
that was one of my favorite. That is my favorite non-makeup era album.
Me too.
It was a great return to form.
Oh yeah.
Great album.
Bob Ezrin.
You know, we'll talk about that then, but I'm looking forward to all these upcoming conversations, my
sure.
brother. And I just want to remind everybody, go to kissthelive.com or facebook.com/kissthelive. Find out where we're going to be. Come to the shows. But don't just come to the show. If you heard this interview and you go to the website and you go and see one of our shows, come up and tell me. Come introduce yourselves to the band. We want to meet you. It's not just somewhere we go in and we go out. We always hang and take pictures with everybody after our shows. You know, we really are Kiss fans, just like the people that are in the audience. So we want to meet them. So for you people out there that are going to be coming to any of our shows, come say hi. Come meet the band and let's hang out, you know?
Yeah, and Jason Lee, final thing for today. When we do the interview on Revenge, I want to talk to you a little bit because I meant to last time we talked about the fact that you're all into being a chef in that. So I want to make that part of the next interview so we kind of get a different side of you, if you know what I mean.
Not a problem. I can definitely share with you a few things about that.
Okay, bye-bye.
Take care, buddy.
Chaotic Riff Magazine.